Hi, it's Chris Sepper from MedCity News. I hope you're all doing well for this fine Friday. I come to you from what we call MedCity East here in Cleveland, which is my home study. I'm joined by two MedCity reporters this week. We're going to talk about some of the more interesting news that's happened in the past week, as well as focus on one person in particular. First, I'm joined by, in Chicago, Neil Vercel, who covers healthcare technology for MedCity News, and in San Diego is Megan Akeshavan. She is in San Diego, and she writes about early-stage life sciences. How you doing, too?
It's Friday.
It's Friday. God, it's been a long week. So, somebody who's been in the news, and both of you have been writing about in the last couple of weeks, is Patrick Soon-Shiong. And you've both had a chance to interview Patrick Soon-Shiong, and you've both had a chance to kind of write in depth and get to know him as a healthcare entrepreneur. There have been so many announcements in the past couple of weeks, whether it was at American Telemedicine Association 2 weeks ago, or even this week with news that came out. I think it's a perfect time for the two of you just to talk about what's been happening, your take on him, and your take on some of the ideas and issues that surround him. So I'm just going to turn it over to the both of you. And Neil, we'll start with you. Just talk about some of the news that you've written up this week, and then we'll go to Megan.
Okay, I think we should start with Megan, actually, because the news that happened this week was right up her alley.
Rewriting the script on me, Vercel. You're rewriting the script. Megan,
ha ha ha! Little ad lib.
Go, Megan.
Okay. Yeah, so there were two things that kind of came out this week. The first one was that NantWorks, or the division of NantWorks, that focuses on the biosciences, Nant Bioscience, according to SEC filings, raised $100 million. One can guess that that comes from Patrick Soon-Shiong himself. But it's still, it's really interesting with this NantWorks company. As Neil has said before, he's committed to invest $1 billion in this company, and he hasn't said in what divisions it will be. And every time I look, there's a new division to this company. Nant Bioscience that got the $100 million, but there are so many other subsidiaries that we don't know exactly where he's directing the attention and the funding to, so it's really interesting. I kind of like to call him the Tony Stark of healthcare because he's doing a million things at once. So then there was some more news that came out today, and that is that he is investing $90 million upfront to a San Diego company called Sorrento Therapeutics. More specifically, they have a subsidiary called Yggdrasil that has a cancer therapeutic that is considered a next-generation version of Abraxane. Soon-Shiong made all of his money, or the big chunk of it in the beginning, on the chemotherapy drug Abraxane. So it's really interesting that he's circling back and investing a lot of money in buying this particular chemotherapy drug. Because while it's $90 million up front, it could go up to $1.3 billion overall, or even more. So it's a pretty, there's a lot of money involved here. So that's for this week. Can you take us back a little bit, Neil?
Sure. Well, see, I've been really focusing on Nant Health, which is just one subsidiary of NantWorks. NantWorks is kind of his umbrella company, and I think the $1 billion figure has been that's been thrown about has been for the overall NantWorks and all its subsidiaries, but more money keeps coming in. I think Megan, you talked to me earlier that there's $300 million in there that's flowed in there from Kuwait, among other things. So there's an enormous amount of money floating around here. It almost seems to me, based on what he had described at ATA nearly 2 weeks ago in Los Angeles, when Chris and I were out there, that it's almost reminiscent of WebMD circa 2000, 2001, around the time of the dot-com bust, because WebMD under Jeffrey Arnold bought up everything and tried to do everything in healthcare. They tried to be consumer focused. They tried to be, with the regular WebMD that everybody knows. They ended up buying Medscape as well on the professional side, which they still own, but they also bought things like the Medical Manager, which is an old practice management system that that goes back, I think it's maybe to the 80s. That then they ended up selling off to Sage Software, and it exists in it still exists in another form right now. But I recall reading the annual report for WebMD around 2001, saying they lost something like $6 billion because they bought all these companies but didn't have a revenue model, even though they had, they did have a software company. But when the dot-com bubble burst, that was kind of it, and they had to sell off a lot of pieces. And right now, WebMD is just the consumer health site and Medscape. But it was so much bigger back then, and it sounds like the way Soon-Shiong has rolled up a lot of companies in the last few years, it's reminiscent of that, with a few exceptions. Number one, of course, he has healthcare experience, whereas Jeff Arnold did not. He's been highly successful in business before, and I think Arnold was before then. I really don't know too much of what he did before then, but it does sound like he's trying to do a lot and maybe biting off too much. And in fact, his Twitter handle is @SolveHealthcare. And honestly, no one person is going to solve healthcare. Let's face it.
Yeah, but let me jump in there for a second because I mean, don't we need a Tony Stark, right? I mean, you have.
We might.
Well, let's look at it this way. In tech, I would say it's Elon Musk, right? Mm-hmm. But in healthcare, who is it? And so. I want to segue this into kind of what you know about him personally, and what's your take on him as far as this kind of Tony Stark figure, okay. And I'll let you decide who goes first here. Yeah. Who is he, and does this personality match the gravitas?
Well, I only had about 7 or 8 minutes with him, and you can actually hear my full interview. The audio of it on MedCity News from last, I think I posted it a week ago today. I had an audio interview of him, and for those few minutes, I mean, he was very engaging. He's very smart, obviously. He is very pleasant to be around, even though his staff kind of puts a wall around him. But once you get to him, and in a way, he's eccentric, but I think you have to be to, when you have that much money. The photo that we ran of him is, at the ocean. Of course, he, lives in L.A., so, that's easy to do. He owns a piece of the L.A. Lakers now, so I guess, rich people have to have hobbies. But he does have a passion about genomics and personalized medicine and looking beyond even genomics into proteomics. And once you mention that word, I'm lost. So, Megan, if you want to pick up from there.
Yeah. Well, I haven't spoken to him in about in more than a year.
Right.
But although this year at this year's JP Morgan, I very nearly spilled coffee on him. We were both in line, and I definitely tripped, and he kind of gave me a funny look, understandably, because I was going at him with coffee. But he goes nuts over proteomics, and that's because it goes beyond genetics. It goes beyond. It goes into the expression of like how these genes work and like what actually the output is, and that's sort of like a really terrible description of what proteomics is all about. Yeah. But he basically is all about what the effect is, what the phenotype is, things like that.
Yeah. N equals 1 is basically where he's going for this in terms of treatments, including, and cancer is his background.
Yeah. And, I had 2 kind of interesting anecdotes from when I did talk to him. One of them was about cancer, and I think it's a little descriptive of his personality. Because I'm going to mix this up, but he was basically talking about this one patient that he was helping treat, and so she was not responding to, I think, she had ovarian cancer, and she wasn't responding to the prescribed treatments for that. They sequenced her and found out that the way that the tumor was working out, it was more similar to a breast cancer, so they started giving her a breast cancer drug, and she was weeks away from the end, and then he was like, yeah, she went on a cruise, she's getting much better. So the thing is that he was talking about the team of the physicians he was working with. They ended up fudging the rules with the insurers to say that she had breast cancer when she really had ovarian cancer. It was something like that. I don't want to completely libel it, but it was something along those lines. My point being is that I think he's a little bit, he'll do what needs to be done to get an outcome that works. We also talked about how much he hates the Affordable Care Act. Okay. He's not a fan of the way that the ACA rolled out. So those are 2 other interesting things. aspects.
So I want to know from both of you, are you buying his vision, right? I mean, Neil, you said you threw a little shade on him earlier where you
Right.
said, you don't know if anybody can really solve healthcare. And but in the sense of where healthcare is today, he's among what I would consider one of the true convergenists, right? Where you
Yes.
have technology and traditional healthcare are colliding. It's often done clumsily in many of these cases. Sorry.
Yeah.
Should have put it on silent.
Can you do that? Can you do that with your dog also? Can you?
No, I cannot. My poor
Okay.
puppy. But so when you see how much of it is going to be substance and is going to lead to something, and what do you think is not going to make it work?
Okay. Well, I was very skeptical also in my piece last week that included the audio interview about the prototype he showed at ATA called Nat Porter, which is look kind of like a hard drive, look like an external hard drive. Maybe a little bit bigger than a smartphone. He wants it to be able to store every piece of data on an individual patient and for patients to own it and control it. And that includes a genomic sequence, which takes up, half a terabyte or something like that. To me, it sounded like an untethered personal health record, and I am completely bearish on all untethered personal health records because there's never been any incentive for anybody to use it. It doesn't fit in the physician workflow. Patients aren't going to go and enter data unless they're very, very, very highly engaged. It's like what Quicken was before online banking took off, where you had to sit down there and manually type in everything from your check register. He says it's different because of the speed, and I'm still skeptical, but I'm willing to wait and see how it plays out before I completely diss it. So he may be onto something. The speed and also the depth and breadth of the information may differentiate, or it may not. It's certainly a lot more substantive than what Google showed us with tons and tons of hype back in 07 or 08 with Google Health, which to me was vaporware.
So with Nat Porter, are you buying or selling?
I'm waiting. I'm setting this one out until I actually see.
You know what happens to people who stand in the middle of the road, Neil. Anyway,
at the moment, I'm selling.
Okay, Megan, what about you? What do you think's gonna have real traction with him? What's kind of crazy rich guy hype?
I might just be a little bit of a cheerleader or something like that. I find it all very interesting, and I think today's announcement. I've spoken in depth with Henry G. He's the CEO of Sorrento Therapeutics, and that's the company that they acquired this next-gen Abraxane from. And it seemed like back before Nance. Which one? One of the Nants was involved with it. They had a very, smart business plan going on. This was a drug that was already approved abroad in Korea. It was developed by a Korean maker. They had big, trials going on. So I think it's really, it's like a smart choice and an intuitive choice for Soon-Shiong to go after. And that's a lot of money that, they're pushing that way. So as far as I think he knows what he's doing as far as cancer goes, as far as immunotherapy goes. I would trust it, and I think just given what I've heard him talk about proteomics and genomics, I think he's on the money. But I can't speak as much for the Google of health records and things like that. So. It might be one of those things where, it's like a big venture portfolio and you expect like a portion of it to tank and a portion of it to do well, and
that could be.
Yeah, maybe that's why they're diversifying, but I'm pretty, I'll hold out hope. I'll be optimistic.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing, what he said, the Google personalized medicine, I think was the exact phrase that he used, and that I see as being a lot more realistic. And I think you're onto something in saying that it's just a broad portfolio, and some will work and some won't. I think that being the Google, somebody has to sort through all that data, and there is so much of it. And right now, only the largest health systems, really academic health systems, have the capability and the data to do that. And of course, a lot of analytics companies are trying to do that as well, and also why you've seen so many health insurers buy their way into the analytics market of late.
Yeah, I was actually talking to Craig Venter, who's another big name,
Yes.
yesterday, and we were talking about human longevity and what the business plan of human longevity really is, because they are sequencing thousands of genomes.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're up to 95,000 right now. And what he was saying is that people will pay for that data.
If you're really sick, if you got a rare form of cancer, you will do anything it takes as long as you have the means.
And that's
their
market, and I would imagine that Soon-Shiong's after a similar slice. I think.
Yeah.
Well, I think I want to thank both of you for talking and giving background on him. I think that probably, like you said, I like that Tony Stark reference, and then there need to be. I'm going to drop names, by the way, in case.
No kidding.
On Ventnor and Soon-Shiong and the CEO of the company that they just acquired. I love it. But I think that I do think that he is a Tony Stark of our time, and hopefully that he should have spectacular failures, right, along with his spectacular successes, or else he's not trying hard. So it will be interesting to see what pans out and what doesn't work, and really you need more people along that lines. So we're going to transition, and like in anything, for journalists, it's sometimes all about us. So I want to talk a little bit about MedCity's redesign. It's something that's really important to us, in part because it's really we think it's going to enhance the experience that all of you are feeling right about now. The design, as many people know, MedCity is acquired by Breaking Media, which is the B2B healthcare B2B digital publisher in New York, and we're their health vertical. As part of that, we moved to their platform. Which is really, to me, a sleek and clean design. I think that if anybody's been on the site for the last few days, it went live around 3 a.m. 2 days ago. You see a distinct difference in the way we present our information and the number of things you can access. That's important, but to me the most important thing is that we're going to be able to spread the word about healthcare innovation more effectively on this platform. I say that because this platform is shared through the Breaking Media family of sites. They have a legal blog, a high finance blog. They do fashion, defense, government, energy. And when we write about something that we think will touch the Defense Department or the fashion industry or law or beyond, those MedCity news stories are going to spread and go beyond just our site. And that's a big win for us. Police are coming for Neil. And so that's what excites me about the site. I hope it's a richer experience for everybody out there. But I think it's a big moment for MedCity, because now not only will people who are coming straight to MedCity find this content, but now people, essentially alpha influencers from all these other industries are going to find MedCity content living on the sites that they like to go to, and that's a big deal for us. But I'd love to, Megan, to start with you. You've been with us over a year. What's your take on the look and feel of the site?
I really like it, actually. I think it's clean. I think it's easier to use. I like that you can find the kind of stories that you're looking for by sector a little bit easier. And I'm a bit dork for fonts, and I like the fonts that we're using. But I think it looks a little bit more. I don't know. I like it. I like it.
Neil?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to say anything bad about my new bosses. It looks good.
Amen. Well, and I think you touched on something important there. I think if you look at how MedCity was designed before, our goal is to kind of cut through the silos, because that if you're really going to make things move, as we just talked about Patrick Soon-Shiong, you're going to have to leave the traditional and go and embrace the new and embrace the technology sector. And so you see this collision. And always we presented our news that way on our front page and when we write. But when you would look at the news, it would be in kind of larger siloed buckets. Now, when you go to MedCity and you're looking, the first 3 menu choices you have, if you want to drill down to see beyond kind of what our news of the day is, it says healthcare convergence, patient engagement, and startups and investing, because that's really the identity of the industry now. It's not about silos. But in that same sense, as Megan had mentioned, there's a menu button in the top left corner. You click on that, and you'll be actually able to drill down into sectors even better than you were before. You can go into biotech. You can go into diagnostics alone. You can go into medical devices alone, and they aren't going to group payers and providers separate sections, things like that that will allow you to kind of have the best of both worlds, the modern world of healthcare, but then also dive deeper into the space that you might be passionate about. And that's important. That's important to us.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I like some of the new enhancements. We have the the popular posts up there to show what other people are looking at. So I think we're trying to get more social. We're trying to be better with our tweets on our Facebook, and engage a little more on LinkedIn as well. So you'll see a lot more of us on social media. It's nice to have our Twitter feed right there on the homepage. Also, if you scroll down toward the bottom, you'll see our Twitter feed embedded right there in the page, and all that is great because there's convergence happening, not just in healthcare, but in media, in publishing, in the way people communicate.
So those are the two things we really wanted to talk about this week on MedHeads, which is the MedCityNews.com look at what's happening in the world of the business of healthcare. I'll just say for Neil Vercel in Chicago and Megan Akeshavan in San Diego, I'm Chris Sepper.
Here actually, we should plug one thing. I'm going to be coming out your way this weekend for the Cleveland Clinic's Patient Experience Summit. So I will, be out there covering that, hearing about, how to improve the patient experience from, and visiting the Cleveland Clinic for the first time actually, and you see your offices for the first time too. So. Gonna be able to report on some more thought leaders. I don't know if I'll be able to drop a name like Craig Venter, but I'll certainly do my best.
Actually, I'm glad you said that. I think that what we're going to try and do, maybe we'll use Periscope, is at least bring one of the keynotes from the Patient Experience Summit live on MedCityNews.com next week. There's definitely some logistical hurdles in making that happen, but we're actually trying to do that because I think. As we talk about patient engagement, the patient experience is something that all in healthcare has to embed. In fact, Stephanie Baum, who also covers health technology, is on an airplane actually leaving the AARP 50 summit, and so it's been a lot of exposure to more the consumer side of healthcare, which is what everybody really needs.
Yeah, and by the way, she knocked it out of the park today with her analysis of that venture capital panel, where they're talking about building a killer app. First of all, you don't want anything to be killer in healthcare. That's an old joke that I've heard so many times at tech conferences. But also, you're talking about the 50+ set. If you're 75 with multiple chronic diseases, you don't want a killer app. You just want something that works, that's going to help you feel better and improve your life. You don't care about social points and winning badges and things like that.
No, that's true. That's very true. Well, I am going to call it now.
Okay.
We've had a killer broadcast, and so we're going to kill it now. And so for Neil Vercel and for Megan Akeshavan, I'm Chris Sepper. I hope you have a great weekend, and thank you again for reading MedCity. See you, everybody.